Come on,
Done
Stephanie.
and done.
Come on, Stephanie.
You got the recorder on?
Good job. You don't have your glasses on.
Okay. This is the Williamson County Board of Commissioners meeting. We're reconvening. It's 1:30 PM in the afternoon, July the 8th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Jim Marlowe,
Present.
Brent Gentry,
Present.
Jim Atkinson.
I'm going to get Kim Meyer on the phone. Kim?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Jim. We've got board meeting going on right now. Got Tim and Brent here, and we had been in discussion about the bond abatement and everything earlier in executive session. In discussing that, we've come up with a plan of not abating the bond, but basically, in a nutshell, correct me guys if I say it wrong, if I misspeak, but reducing the, giving them the payment that would include the payment for the bond and the interest, and then reducing the operating expenses as part of that payment, which would be actually a total of 1.4 for the operating expenses. I believe is correct what we agreed to. We do realize that that would have an effect on PTEL. And so I'm asking you if you could explain, before we make a decision on this, the ramifications of going that direction in an effort to correct our payment to the PBC. Explain what the ramifications of would be if we went that direction, how it affects PTEL.
Okay, well, it would actually be the explanation would be how detail affects your collections, your real estate tax collections going forward. So if I understand correctly, traditionally, the $2 million line that is the lease payment, what you're talking about is taking that down, did you say, to a $1.4 million number?
Yes.
For operating expenses,
For
yes.
operating, okay, and then you would levy the bond payment outside of detail.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so, and that's an automatic, if you levy the bond payment outside, it does become an outside detail levy. So what we're talking about is reducing your detail base by $600,000, going from 2 million to 1.4. Okay, so it's a pretty easy path to get that answer. So what you do is you could do it in a couple of steps, or you could just do it in one step. I'm just going to do it in one step. So you would just simply take the $600,000 reduction, and you would multiply that by the projected PTEL plus growth increase. So for 22 payable 23, for example, we already know that CPI is 5%. Your tip one will be rolling out at approximate 5%. And then you would have probably at least another 2% in growth. It may be a little higher, okay? So 12% would be a conservative estimate for this next upcoming year. So with that being said, 600,000 times 12%. Okay. So in 1 year, that will be 72,000 that you will not have in your growth for moving it from inside detail to outside detail. So that'll be the next year, the estimate. Now, in a normal year, it's normally 2% CPI, 2% growth, okay? So in a normal year, it'll be probably 24,000, 25,000 a year that you would lose. So because tip one is rolling out this next year, that's what, and the CPI is not usually more than between 1% and 2%. So this next year is an extremely high year for growth in CPI. The last time this particular size of growth happened was probably around 94, 95, when there was the last burst, if you will, like this. So this particular year going into it, it'll be about $72,000 it'll cost you. And then each year from then on, it'll be, if everything stays normal, about 25 grand a year. Now, no matter how you look at compounding that, some people look at it as 72 plus 25 plus 25, and they kind of roll that into a big number, you know. And some people just look at it as the 72 and then the 25 grand a year. No matter how you look at it, whether you compound it individually or aggregately, it's money that's being lost. You know, I don't know there's a good way to say, you know, here's how to best value your loss.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I guess if my question would be, if we didn't have TIF rolling off this year, how would that affect it?
Yeah. If you didn't have TIF rolling off, it would cost you about 25,000 in growth. It's the 600,000 times the normal CPI growth, which is about 4% combined normally is what we're working with.
Okay. So basically we're talking about a difference of $72,000 per year.
The 72,000
And
will
we-
be the year TIF rolls out.
Right.
But then that 72, I mean, you'll lose that 72 forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll just add 25 to it the next year, and 25 to it the next year. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, how it
When you
compounds.
compound it,
Yeah.
okay, there's really no good answer when you're losing money.
Well, I brought this question up to Rhett while we were
Yeah.
still in the executive session. I said, well, what if, let's just say hypothetically, the PBC decides, for whatever the reason, we need to have another, or the county decides we need to have another courthouse. Let's say, for example, hypothetically, courthouse burnt down, we can't, instead of remodeling it, we're gonna build a new one. They want to reissue bonds, say another, say 10 years from now.
Okay.
Would that then bring everything back to the way it was before?
No. Once you move this levy out of detail,
Yeah.
there's not going to be an option on abating the current bond. I mean, they'll never be able to be abated again.
No, I mean, listen, hypothetically, I guess my question, let me clarify my question. Hypothetically,
Okay.
the bond is paid off, we have a disaster, we have to have a new courthouse, whatever. And the only way to do it would be, once again, to issue bonds.
Okay.
And then, which means then we bring, you know, PVC back in, we reestablish the PVC and everything else.
Well, see, you get into the intricacies there of PTEL because the original PVC was brought to life in the late 60s, around 68, somewhere in there. But then PTEL was passed about 96, 97. So to do what you're suggesting and issue new bonds, at that point, I believe you have to have a referendum to get voter approval to do that.
No, I get that.
Okay.
I'm saying it all goes through.
Yes. Okay. But here's the challenge. Okay. This is where I was going with the other discussion. Once you lower the $1.4 million, the $2 million down to 1.4, what's going to happen now reduces your PTO base. And moving forward, you're only going to be allowed to add CPI plus growth at that normal, probably 4% clip. We'll all be dead before you're going to get up to the, you know, to recapture that 600,000 and above the PTO line. You start over, you're basically readjusting your base and you're starting over with CPI growth increases from that lower number. So once you take it out, the only way to take that number from a 1.4 back to a 2 million inside of PTEL is you'd have to cut your general fund or the highway fund. You'd have to do a hard shift inside another PTEL line to restore that back up to the 2 million.
Well, that's good.
That's what happens when you have something in detail and you remove it. It's gone. You can't shift it back the next year or 5 years later or 10 years later. All you're gonna get is standard CPI plus growth increases from here. That's kind of the point of detail, is to, you know, if you don't need it any longer, then basically they're trying to limit government's ability just to, you know, layer things back in.
So the first year, we'd probably experience a loss of 75,000 or 72,000.
72, and then by the next year, if you compound it, take the 72 plus the 25, so that becomes 100. And then you just add 25 to it, and so by year 5, you know, you're now losing 200,000 a year, and then it just kind of grows there, you know.
Okay, all right. Anybody else got any questions?
So this is, and we're only talking about the amount of money that we were gonna spend on the bond and the rent payment to PBC. What effect does this have on everything else in the county? I'm confused. I'm confused how, so we're trying to do away, we're trying to take out the money that we would have paid PBC to cover the bond cost. Okay, that's now gonna be covered by the non-abated bond referendum, whatever that was. How does that affect the other $1.4 million or anything else in the county? Won't everything else be going up according to that same, capturing that same growth?
Well, so during COVID, what the board decided, particularly the last 2 years, was not to share the growth. Okay, so we took the total of the aggregate levy, we did the CPI plus growth, and the general fund received all of the growth. In past years, the board decided to share that growth equally with all of the boards that you appoint to, such as 708, County Health, University of Illinois Extension. You also decided with PBC to treat them equally and share the growth, share the CPI plus the growth percentage in detail. So what we're talking about, Tim, is extending without that 600,000 in your detail base. The county board will have $72,000 left, either put into the general fund as growth or to distribute to these other boards, whatever your decision. You usually decide that each year, year by year, how you want to do that. So by taking that out of your base, that 600,000, you'll just receive 72,000 left to either distribute or put in the general fund.
There's mine.
So in essence, your base number drops. So you can only
So
get,
let me explain maybe the two-step method, it'll be a little bit clearer.
because your bond is over here and the rest of the stuff is.
But we're still capturing all the rest of the growth on all the rest of the levy.
No, your total levy amount, you can only go 105%.
105% of what that is. So when you're gonna drop it from 20,710 or 20,710 to 20,110. Then you're 5% of 20,110. Not 5% of what was 20,710. So you're going backwards, and then you got to build yourself back up just to get to even. Because the bond payment is not factored in on any of that stuff. It doesn't.
Not right now, it's not, if you don't pay the bond payment.
Well, I mean,
Bond is not
subject to
subject
veto.
to veto.
You could have a $2 million bond payment, and that could be 22,710. That $2 million bond payment is not part of the PTO calculation or of the growth or anything.
You
Because
figured it.
that is debt. That is
Bonds
your,
are not included in it.
they're not included in this.
They have to be paid in full.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, but we've captured the growth on what on the $2 million we've been paying to.
Well, under that line item you have, that's eligible, but not a $2 million like bond payment or $700,000 bond payment. There's
Right,
not the
that's specific,
5%.
I'm talking about, that's not how it's listed on the levy, is it? The bond is.
Bonds are
Bonds are separate.
excluded in
They're
levy,
excluded,
yeah, they're
okay.
not, so we're just gonna be looking at what the levy amount was, what you guys got, and then it's 5% above.
All right. Cam, go ahead and explain your other part.
Well, I thought this might help Tim a little bit more if I did it the two-step way, you get the same answer. But let's say, for example, the total of the county levies is $15 million, okay? And the CPI growth is 12%. So on $15 million, and we're projecting a 12% growth, that would be a growth of 1,800,000. That your levies would be allowed to grow. Typically, in the last 2 years, that 1.8 million would be deposited in the general fund. All the growth was there, not knowing how COVID was going to affect what you had going on. In other years, that 1.8 million would be parted out in equal proportion to the different boards that the county appoints to. When we take that $15 million PTEL levy down to 14,400,000, we drop that base by 600,000. And now do our 12%, that number is 1,728,000 that you would get to share or keep. That's where the reduction of 72,000 is coming in. When you reduce your PTEL base, you lose your PTEL growth on that base.
It's the growth that we're losing out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if that helped reverse that, the
No.
two-step process.
I think that helped me tremendously.
Yeah, anytime you bring your PTEL base down, you don't get to extend growth on what you remove.
So I'm gonna ask this again because I'm still not understanding this. In last year's budget, we put in $2 million for the PBC. And and that was that total amount, the $2 million total amount, was it included in our total levy?
It was
Yes.
included.
So then the money that we gave them, they used to pay their bond. Okay, that was part of the total levy.
Part of the other 2 million.
Part of it, but the budget for the PVC last year was like 2.4 or 2. So the PVC paid 400,000 of their own money
No, I'm not talking about
To-
that.
to pay the bond.
I'm talking about what we levied.
We levied $2 million exactly.
We levied $2 million,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Okay, and that was part of our total levy.
Right.
Okay, so was the bond payment excluded?
The bond-
The bond was abated,
The bond was abated, yes.
So it doesn't go into that
so
number.
they didn't do the number.
Bonds are
I understand that.
excluded
I
from the
understand.
levy.
We used money out of general fund to pay PBC $2 million. Right? You guys took 600 grand, whatever it was, out of that 2 million to pay your bond. Right?
Yes.
The $2 million, was it part of the total levy? Was it excluded?
No,
It was part of
it was part of
It
the
was
total.
part of it.
Yes.
Right, because that is
The bond payment was part. That was.
That was already part of the total levy.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
The rest of it, like what we were saying, was for their expenses.
if it's outright.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting to. It's that we were capturing the growth on that bond. So what is the solution then? Is the 72,000 this year and 25,000 after that? Is that a reason for us not to do this?
If the way honestly, the way I look at this is one of two things, just handling it like what we talked about. And, if they don't abate the bond, then we go with, reducing their expense line.
Yeah, we
Which
only have two
lowers-
choices.
Right, but the other avenue would be, is if the PBC would go ahead and abate the bond. Once again, we'd be back to the way things would be in a normal year.
Right.
And am I correct on that, Kim?
Yeah, I think traditionally the $2 million was inclusive of operating expenses and an amount for bond payment. It was on the PTEL line as the lease.
So if they did abate the bond and they told Amanda that, okay, we are going to abate the bond, then everything else goes back to the way it was. And then, once again, like what we decided, we get back together with the PBC and discuss this issue, how we go moving forward.
Okay.
That's, it's an option.
That's only two options I see.
So actually, what was the reasoning for them to not debate the bond?
Well, I guess it's probably 2 or 3 fold. You want me to tell you what they were?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Because that's gonna help us with this.
Well, one is like the bond was never abated properly.
Okay.
In the, whatever, the 10 years that the bond's been out there.
Okay.
I mean, you know, as going through, Kim can attest to this, when you're doing like the abatement of the jail bond, you have, a notice, a public hearing, you vote on the abatement in a meeting, you make a motion to do that, sign off on the resolutions, and then you submit it to Amanda. That's how most entities do that. That was never done. I mean, throughout, there's been one time in the last 10 years where there was an abatement signed, but none of the other processes were done properly.
Okay,
That's water in the bridge, it is what it is.
okay.
2, I mean, because of lack of communication from both sides, in the past, monies have been given based off of what the budgets were with nothing, interaction between the two. And you built up this gigantic reserve that's sitting there in
Right.
the PBC now, which I'll go on record, the PBC does not need the amount of money that they currently have in reserve. I mean, that needs to be whittled down and dropped down. But it was just basically, you would give it, and then as Kim mentioned, everybody shared the wealth of the increases in the PTEL, so then everybody got the respective amounts on top of their normal, minimum amounts. The third factor is the fact that, the PBC felt that their legs were cut out from under them because they were submitted a budget and it was, we were just going to be given $2 million. And honestly, this was the best way to, I guess, force the issue. That's,
Get to the table,
yeah,
basically.
so, that's where it stems from.
So we still have the option right now, if the PBC, knowing, as we've been talking with Doug Peebles and with Tom Malkovich, that we're all in favor of redoing the lease agreement and looking at things, and I'll be honest, I do understand, whatever item that you purchased, years and years ago for repair, it's an increase in price now due to supply chain problems and everything else. And so I get that prices have increased. But with that in mind now, with both boards, with the understanding that we are willing to work together and redo this lease, could we ask the PBC once again if they would abate the bond and keep everything the same, knowing that we're all in agreement going forward? And I think in our meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, we would, I hate using the word, use this as a Band-Aid right now, but it buy the time necessary for us to work on getting back together with the lease and everything and work our problems out.
Yeah, I think we can, I can't speak for the entire PBC board, but the goal is to do the right thing from here on out.
Right, that's our goal on both sides.
I don't want to see, anybody increased in, I haven't seen an increase in any of the taxes for anybody. I guess.
It would require you.
We have to abate it, so we'd have to, we need to put out the notice, we'd have to have a meeting, we'd have to do all that stuff.
And that requires a 48-hour notice.
It's
So
gonna
it's
have to
not
be
like
done.
it takes a month or anything like that.
Are you guys having a meeting next week?
No, it's the third Wednesday,
Oh,
so it
but
would be the
same.
following. Now,
You could
Could you-
call a
could
special
you
meeting.
call a special meeting?
You could call a special meeting.
I'll be honest, so I'm out the 12th and 13th. I have a feeling I'm gonna have to explain all this, too. But, we could definitely meet Friday, the 15th, I would think, or even Thursday, the 14th, and try to get, something done. And, we'd have to ask Brett, but I'm assuming if we have the meeting, make the motion, sign the paperwork, we're done. We
That's all
can
I need.
take it to you, and then you can wipe it out and then move forward. Now, I guess there's maybe 2 issues one would be, I think you guys made a comment about that looking at operational expenses, everything was like $2.2 million. If you abate the whole thing, only get the 2 million, I mean, then we're still $200,000 like short, but nevertheless, again, there's $6.3 million sitting in reserve accounts, overall. So we can make this work out, I think. And then we need to start narrowing down and coming to some kind of agreement on what is a true
Where we
reserve.
go.
And then the communication, and then we're going through and talking every 6 months or at a minimum, every year of where do we stand, what are we trying to accomplish, what's the end game?
And I think this is
everybody else.
how everything's got off center from eons ago, and people made assumptions and stuff, whether it be purpose or not, or just by accident, and nobody really understood or whatever. So we're off base, off center is what I refer to it. But we all want to get back to center of this lease, come up with a new lease, clearer language. And we understand increases in prices and everything like that. So, and just see, but in the meantime, the issue right now is getting the tax bill out. So one option, basically it boils down to this. One option is to not abate the bonds, and then we go through this motion, and the results is how it affects PTEL in moving forward, loss of revenue in moving forward. Option 2 would be knowing that we want to help each other, knowing, look, let's just get through this right now so we can get the tax bills out. We're going to work together on this and come to understanding, and the other option.
Actually, I didn't ask you that, put you on the spot. I had a sense of what was going on, and I didn't know what was going through the minds of the PVC, because I don't talk to them, But there's no doubt that there's been bad blood and no trust, okay? You feel like we're going forward and we get kicked backwards, okay? And they're getting frustrated, all right? But we gotta have the PVC's gotta have the board. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
Now, last year, I'm asking you this because you're on the board there too. We give you $2 million, and let's say you asked for 2.8. Let's throw it out there.
Mhm.
Where did the 800,000 go to? What was it applied to? Let's say, was it to shore up our budget, or was it just thrown out there of everybody, or?
Well, I guess I went into ours. You're allowed to do,
Well, we can't.
yeah, you can.
Well,
Because
not
you work off of bottom lines. So if the bottom line of PTEL is within those limitations, you can put that in any of those line items that are allowed. Because you're the only one you can't in essence is the bond payment. But if the bond was abated, it doesn't matter.
If it's abated, yeah.
So.
If it's abated.
You can look at it and say, if you had 2.4 million, which I know there was I'd have to look at the budget, but I'm sure there was a $300,000 or $400,000 maintenance, line item in the PVC, because you just never know what's going to happen with the buildings, and they may have used 20,000 of it. They could have used 200,000 of it. I don't know what that is, but nevertheless, you didn't use all that. There were some other things that you probably didn't use, and so you weren't like you were $1.3 million short, to be able to operate. Because obviously, I'd have to. I could tell you from.
I'm assuming while you're looking at it, I'm assuming that if you do the abatement, you're a board of what, 5 or 6? How many's on there?
There's 5 of us, but I could just.
You could talk to one
Yeah.
person individually.
I can just tell you. So if you want to, I'll compare you, since I've been talking year over year numbers on different stuff.
While you're looking at that, let me make one other comment. I want to bring you back to what Brett said was one of his concerns in going forward, was if the name that he brought up ever ran across or whatever, that may be an issue. I'm not going to describe the issue, not going to describe the name. But with the intent that we're going to correct this, that's.
I think no matter how you look at it, it's a Band-Aid effect. ripping it off one way or the other. You gotta figure out which way is the easiest, not to rip the hairs off your arms.
Well, if we do the,
I mean, that's,
there is definitely an end.
abatement might be the best easy way of thing, but.
If we don't do the abatement, the way it is right now, then there's gonna definitely be an end date on this. It's gonna count down until it's done.
Sure.
And that's gonna save, ultimately, that's gonna save taxpayers money.
So you're in favor of paper, not what way do you feel about it?
Before you answer that,
Well, I was gonna
Before
say,
you
if you don't abate it, you drop that 600,000 down. I mean, you're down 600,000. I mean, in the county side this year, I mean, plus the growth that you're losing on top of it. And then the other part is if you can put something in the lease that will, I mean, even if you want to say that you, in the bond schedule, that you make disbursements and X is restricted monies. So like, I could distribute, if it's $2.4 million and 630,000 of that is a bond payment, that like we write a $630,000 check to the PBC and then write the other portion to the PBC, knowing that that's going to go into, you know, the restricted bond account. And that's the directive of that one. And then so there's not a question of writing a quote blank check and letting them have carte blanche, you know,
Right.
avenues of that. I mean, I'm just, you know, I mean, PBC stuff is, you know, public record too. There's $100,000 difference between May 31, 22, total current asset or total liquid current assets and May 31, 2021. So, I mean, obviously we were able to, you know, survive and not have much of a dent. So again, could we make the whole thing and make it work? Yeah, I think we can.
you had a little bit of an increase, correct?
No, last year it was 2 million. It was exactly 2 million.
Okay.
What are we talking about?
Of this,
Income over expense.
yeah, income over expense.
Yeah.
There was, so, I mean, I'm reading, so 6,400,000, 216.52 in May 31, 2021, 6,335, 9015 in 22. So it dropped $100,000. But again, I mean, we're talking, now I don't know if we may not pay the bond payment. Nevertheless, even the worst case scenario, take out the whole bond payment, that's another $70,000. So if that's gone, we're $600,000 less, about exactly where we were, stayed, you know, the level, and we're still, I mean, sitting pretty good on reserves. So I guess what I'm saying, I would not touch, and this is my recommendation, just because I've lived it on the law side. Kim can attest to this because I complain about this every year in park. If you lose it, you never get it back, and you're kicking yourself about why you didn't do it right to begin with. If you make the PBC, if the PBC would agree upon doing the abatement, keep everything the same, and start to renegotiate the lease and work on something, you know, to either figure in that the lease is always going to equal the bond payment plus the operational expenses. No fluff or no purchases of anything or anything like that. Let's focus on real, you know, numbers of what it costs to operate,
Mhm.
and then address it at, you know, 6 months or 9 months or before the next budget of how much of, you know, did we under or over budget? And if you're under budget and you still got all this money, then it's like, okay, start figuring out, are you gonna pay down debt? Are you gonna, you know, build something? Are you gonna redo something? You know, let's get a 3 or 5 year plan of what's going on.
So, but the main problem right now is what do we do in order to get the tax bills out? And now, if we have to have a meeting and PBC has to have a meeting, they both require a 48-hour notice. We've got Saturday and Sunday, which would be that.
You could do one on.
So we could do one on Monday.
Yeah, you do Monday.
I mean, do you guys even have to have a meeting? If we abate it?
No,
Well, probably not. I just said that.
Because all of it would be done. I mean, you're gonna sign off on the she'll redo
Whatever
the
that
extension.
Right.
You
And
can
then
do
so
something
she
or
would
whatever.
remove that,
So-
bond line item, and then it would all be done. And Kim and I have already given you the adjustments of what should go into the corporate, and then also for Social Security and IMRF to match and to be able to equal all the numbers that need to be in there. So I mean, Kim would, or excuse me, Amanda or Janice would just have to change that and you should be able to sign off on it. So the question is can we get a meeting thrown together?
Can you get a meeting thrown together? And for Monday,
I can see. I mean, I can
But
make calls.
does that have, I mean, I'm assuming it has to be voted on, or you could use.
Yeah, we-
You
no.
pick the one member and then.
No, you gotta, I mean, to abate, I mean,
You have to
if you
have-
guys remember, you've had meetings
Right.
of bond abatements. I mean, you have to go through and notice stuff, you have to have it on an agenda. I mean, because that's what we did tonight, abate it,
and
to make sure that we were doing, and that it was on record. So we
technically,
would do the same thing and have you have a resolution.
Okay,
so technically, we're at Friday afternoon at 2:00 right now.
but you've got 48
You'd
hours.
have to post it, so can somebody post it or whatever? You know, if you can, think you can get this meeting, if not, Tuesday would really be fine. I'm
not
saying
here
you are
Tuesday.
the guys that are really, that need to work to get the,
We
she needs time to make calculations and everything, so.
I understand, but I mean, a week is not gonna matter.
I will say this, I applaud the PBC for having a reserve, okay? I'm not down on
Wait,
PBC,
up
but
there.
I get that, but you're always told, the day I walked in the door, 12 to 18 month reserve is what you should have. It's not your fault if you got that money, great. But on the reverse side, if you want to spend some of that down, that would even be more great. But I applaud them for that, but we don't have that kind of reserve.
We were working toward it at one
At
time.
one time, years ago, we had,
And
we had
we
it.
had unforeseen circumstances that came into play.
Well, we've got a pretty good reserve as a board. I'm not talking PNC, I'm talking actual county. We're doing.
We have good policy.
We're doing much better.
Okay.
I mean, I
There
can,
you
so,
go.
we're
There you
doing
go.
much better.
So then, moving forward with this meeting here, I think it would be advisable to let you get a hold of Doug, present this, see if you guys can get a meeting in Monday, Tuesday, or whatever. You and Amanda are the ones that gotta work with this, so, we'll go by your lead on that and, work it out, then I think that might be the best way to go right now, honestly.
We don't have a website, so I mean, last time we did a special meeting, we had to publish it in like the Southern or the Star or the Marion Daily. So we're gonna be, and they're pretty specific on when they feel like running.
Well,
It's not like you could just pick a Monday or run one today. They're telling you gotta have 2 or
can
3
you
days.
not
notice.
use our contact list, you know?
I don't know. We've never had before, but
But I mean, in order, because it's a special meeting,
I'd have to see.
and see, that way you can get it out to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk with Tom about Rich and Doug and find out
Okay,
what we can do.
just keep me
But
abreast.
I mean, whether it's done, I mean, Monday, Tuesday, and you sign off on it, we start Thursday, or Friday,
I
and start
know.
following Monday.
Yeah. I know, what did Brett say? He was gonna be leaving us on Thursday,
13,
Wednesday?
13, I think.
13th, which is Wednesday.
That's what I was like.
Okay, so, you know, we can know something by then or whatever, because actually, work on the lease, we could do that.
That's after.
What's that?
We're not, no, don't even worry about that. We gotta get this part done.
Yeah,
We
no,
can-
no,
we can
I'm
figure
just
out-
saying, that way, this is the issue at hand right now, is the tax bill.
Yeah.
So, we can get that taken care of. Like I said, we both know we're in agreement, work on that lease.
Okay.
So, okay,
Third month, all
Yeah, I got it.
right. Anything else? Stephanie, got anything else on the floor? Good.
Other than that, if there's nothing else, I'll make need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Kim, do you have anything else you want to say? I forgot you were on the phone.
No, that's fine. I was just wanting to make sure you didn't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'll second.
Jim Marlowe,
Yeah.
Brent Gentry,
Yeah.
Jim Atkinson.
Happy Friday, Stephanie.
Oh, Ashley goes.
Second says live.
I'm trying to get it off.
Yeah, I don't-
Guys keep rushing me around.